Hello and welcome to Matchday Live on LCFC Radio as the Foxes look to win back-to-back home Premier League games.
Here's Ricardo! No mistake, Ricardo!
Wilfred Ndidi was on the score sheet as the Foxes secured a point away from home against today's opponent.
Ndidi heads in! Leicester City have equalised! Wilfred Ndidi, redemption!
It's Leicester City against Chelsea and you can hear it all right here on Matchday Live.
It's Vardy! Saved by Kasper Schmeichel! Oh, what an absolute cracker from Harvey Barnes!
Your place for all the big moments. You're listening to Matchday Live on LCFC Radio.
The all-important team news, 2 changes from the starting team at Aston Villa on Tuesday in the League Cup, both very notable. Jamie Vardy is fit to start and replaces Kelechi Iheanacho. Wilfred Ndidi misses out, so Hamza Chowdhury comes in for him. The Foxes team, 4-1-4-1, Kasper Schmeichel the captain in goal. The back 4, Ricardo, Chagla Soyuncu, Johnny Evans and Ben Chilwell. Chowdhury is the holding midfielder. Ahead of him, Ozzy Perez, James Maddison, Yuri Tielemans and Harvey Barnes, with Vardy leading the line. His 199th Premier League appearance for Leicester, which puts him outright second on the all-time list. On the bench for Leicester today, Ward, Justin, Fuchs, Pratt, Gray, Albrighton and Iheanacho. Well, Chelsea have top scorer Tammy Abraham available today. He was a doubt but starts up front. Their last game was a week ago at Hull City in the FA Cup. They make 7 changes, but Willy Caballero keeps his place in goal. Kepa's had a tough season and he's only on the bench. It is Caballero's first Premier League start of the campaign for Chelsea, who go 4-3-3. Caballero between the sticks, Reece James, Antonio Rudiger, Andreas Christensen and the captain Cesar Azpilicueta are the back 4. The midfield 3, Jorginho, Mason Mount and the former Leicester hero N'Golo Kanté, with Abraham flanked by Callum Hudson-Odoi and Pedro. On the bench for Chelsea, Kepa the goalkeeper, Marcus Alonso, Ross Barkley, Willian, Mateo Kovacic, Fikayo Tomori and Michy Batshuayi.
Thank you very much, Chris. Yes, welcome to Matchday Live here on LCFC Radio with me, Dan Bates, sat alongside Gerry Taggart at King Power Stadium. Good afternoon, Gerry. Oh, good morning still, isn't it?
Good morning, yeah, is it? Yeah, it is, isn't it? Wow. This is a rarity, but one I fully approve of.
You can get home and have your nice Saturday night at home, can't you? There's a real sense today, I think, from everyone that's here, people down in the media area and fans as well, that this could be a really, really, really good game of Premier League football today. Yeah,
I think when you're looking at both teams like to control the ball, they like to control the game, and they both like to attack when they have the ball in possession. So it's going to make for a really good game of football. You know, you would think it's not two contrasting styles that, you know, we're used to seeing here when other teams come to King Power, i.e. teams come and sit back and play on the counter-attack. So you'll see a Chelsea team come here and try and take the game to Leicester, and obviously Leicester, as we've seen throughout this season, will obviously try and do the same to Chelsea.
From a Leicester point of view, I guess it is getting over the disappointment, isn't it, of Tuesday evening and going again.
No, there's no doubt about that. You know, there'd be a few sorry faces in the dressing room after Tuesday night, and you know, the one thing that you know, a League Cup semi-final coming in, you know, February does, or the back end of January does, it ensures that because there's a game coming a couple of days afterwards, you have to try and recover from it quickly and pick yourself up very, very quickly. So I'm sure the lads will have got over the disappointment and got themselves ready for this game today.
And a game against someone like Chelsea as well probably suits the Foxes. Would it be fair to say that if, for example, it was a little bit like Southampton at home or Norwich at home, one of those games that I know Leicester had dropped points in earlier in the season, there'd be an expectancy, obviously, on Leicester to come out and get all 3 points, whereas today they know it'll be a difficult game against Chelsea. Maybe it suits them in the fact they've just come off the back of Tuesday.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right there. You know, having one of the so-called Big Four teams coming to Leicester today will suit. and help that healing process, let's call it, because they know that they can't afford, you can't afford to have those sad feelings, whatever, those disappointing feelings for too long, because if anyone comes into the game today with those types and they're not fully focused on what's in front of them today, then there's a good chance that Chelsea could run out winners today. But hopefully that's not the case, and we've got the makings of a really good game of football here.
Yeah, I think it probably will be. It hopefully will be, and both teams like to attack, don't they? You don't expect either of the two sides, particularly the visitors. Chelsea, usually you see teams come to King Power Stadium and look to sit back and soak up the pressure and get a point, whereas from Chelsea you'll expect them to come out and you can see in their starting 11 that they've gone strong, they've gone attacking.
Yeah, that's right. It's Yard into the mix, it's third against fourth. Leicester slightly pulling away. I think it's 8 points, is it now, the gap between third and fourth? So again, massive for Chelsea to try and redeem some of those points, and ideally for them, pull the deficit down to 5, and that will then hopefully give them a little bit of consistency, bit of confidence moving forward. And as far as Leicester are concerned, they'll just be looking to maintain the gap, at least, if not extend the gap between themselves and Chelsea, and just cement that top 4 place that everybody believes that Leicester are capable of pulling off.
So because of that, because it is third v fourth and there is that gap, who do you think today is a bigger game for?
Oh, for Chelsea, without a shadow of a doubt. Without a shadow of a doubt. Frank Lampard, even though he's in his first season as Chelsea manager, and he's a young manager still, when Chris is reading out their starting 11, and never mind the starting 11, their bench, you've got to say that he's under a bit more pressure than Brendan Rodgers to cement that top 4 place. The chase and pack, Leicester 8 points above Chelsea. I think Chelsea have a gap of 6 points, I think, to 5th place, something like that. And so the pressure is definitely on Chelsea to get something out of this game today. A draw hurts none of them, it has to be said. So, I suppose the betting money would probably be on a draw today, to be honest with you. But for Chelsea, I think for them and for Frank Lampard, as the season goes on and the more you listen to Frank being interviewed in his post-match interviews, you can tell there's a bit of frustration there for him, because they're not as consistent as he'd like them to be.
No Kepa for Chelsea today. Well, he's on the bench. We're seemingly presuming. Well, hold on, we'll just bring in Chris, our commentator, who we believe has got the news on why Kepa is on the bench for Chelsea today.
Yeah, well, he's not injured, so it is purely a tactical decision from Frank Lampard. Willy Caballero's last Premier League appearance here in May, when he kept a clean sheet in the 0-0 draw.
Yeah.
Well, what do you make of that then, Gerry?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, if he's on the bench, then you can't be injured. Simple as that. Especially when you're a keeper. And a keeper that's has played every game this season, or every Premier League game at least this season. So it's got to be a form issue. Frank Lampard, who knows why? I don't know what the form issue is, but you see Frank Lampard's stuck with Kepa all season. Probably knew before now that there was a few issues, but did he have that trust in Caballero? Who knows? But he's made that decision today to bring Caballero in, leave Kepa on the bench, and I suppose that may be part of the frustration for him. That one of the things that Chelsea are doing that you probably wouldn't expect is the amount of goals that they're shipping. So that's obviously an area of concern for Frank Lampard, and probably one of the reasons why he's changed the goalkeeper, because let's face it, he hasn't got that many options elsewhere in his back line.
Let's be honest though, it was a reserve goalkeeper, wasn't it, on Tuesday evening at Villa Park that Leicester came up against, who was in inspired form, and I'm sorry to remind you of that.
Well, yeah. But could you class him as a reserve keeper? I think Pepe Reina was watching it in the stand thinking, wow, am I going to get back in the side here? Because that's one of the best performances I've ever seen from a reserve keeper, from a number 2. And to be fair to Ireland, he did nothing wrong in the first leg here. I thought he was outstanding that night. So, but yeah, so we'll have to wait and see. I've seen Caballero on a few occasions. You know, he's a bit ungainly in the way he goes about his business, but you know, he's a capable keeper. There's no doubt about that. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on, because he hasn't had a lot of game time, and probably wasn't expecting to play today. You know, because I think in the modern game, you know, especially where keepers are concerned, they sort of come into the club knowing their role, and that unless there's an injury or a serious lack of form, and I emphasise the word serious lack of form, they're not going to play unless it's in a cup competition. So he's probably a little bit surprised, as are we, that he's starting today.
Well, let's hope from a Leicester point of view there isn't a repeat of Tuesday night, which is a reserve keeper having a fantastic game. Obviously, it led to the defeat away at Aston Villa, and speaking after that game on Tuesday, Johnny Evans emphasised there's still an awful lot to play for between now and the end of the season.
I mean, every game for us now towards the end of the season's a big game. You know, we've got the FA Cup, another cup competition that we, hopefully we can progress in and have a good run. Obviously, and then the league game, we have a big game against Chelsea at the weekend, and before a little sort of winter break. When we come back, every game's really, really big for us. I think obviously our position in the league, puts us in a position where we've got a lot to play for.
That's exactly what you were saying, Gerry, isn't it? That there's still so much to play for Leicester City. The fact they're third in the league isn't even it. There's FA Cup in there as well. There's so much. There's a 14-point gap to fifth. If I just read out a couple of the stats around it, there's 14 Premier League games left as well, Gerry. They're into the FA Cup fifth round. A game at home here to either Coventry or Birmingham, so you'd expect that's a big chance to reach the quarterfinals of that competition as well.
Yeah, absolutely. 14 games left. And they're in third on merit and for a reason. But that doesn't mean that if they just down tools and think the season's over, they're going to stay there. That's 42 points to play for. 14 games. Yes, the gap was 14 points. And you would say on paper and that Leicester are, nailed on to finish in the top 4. But you still have to go out and perform. You still have to go out and win the games of football. You can't just put your feet up yet and think that top 4 is guaranteed. It's similar to, to Liverpool. They're 19 points in front of Manchester City. And everyone's saying that's a league in the bag. But it's not. You still have to go out and perform. You still have to approach every game in the right manner. And it's exactly the same for Leicester. There's a lot of football to be played. There's, as Johnny said, potentially a long cup run in the FA Cup. So it's not about, taking things easier. It's not about, consolidating. It's about trying to move on. It's about trying to go back on a run. It's about trying to break new records. Trying to reach new targets. And that all comes by focusing on each and every game and taking it on its merits.
And it starts, obviously, with the game against Chelsea today, of course. So from that opening few seconds, I think before the West Ham game, which was in the week last week, wasn't it? And they'd just come off the back of the poor result at Burnley, and then the one before here against Southampton. We said in the build-up to the game there that Leicester, will they immediately come out firing? And that's exactly what they did. So I guess the same question applies again today. Because of the disappointment of Tuesday, do you expect that the opening 5 minutes we're going to see a ferocious start from Leicester?
Well, it's like this, Dan. You heard the saying, you fight fire with fire. Well, no more is that terminology useful in today's game, because you've got two very similar teams who play a very similar style of football. And the only way to beat a team like Chelsea is to beat them at their own game. And so you're fighting fire with fire. And so that's how this game I'm expecting it to go today. And so obviously the opening 10, 15, 20 minutes in any game of football is crucial, because that sets the tone for the rest of the game. And if you're not up to pace, especially when you're at home, then you can see yourself, at least a goal down. We've seen it in the reverse fixture at Chelsea. where Leicester were trying to ease their way into the game. And Chelsea just bulldozed their way into the lead and could have been maybe 1 or 2 more up, before half-time, and probably should have been, because Leicester couldn't cope with them in that first half. Obviously in the second half they came back and got the equaliser. But Chelsea on that day started a lot better than Leicester did. Now Leicester have to try and, turn the screw a little bit on Chelsea today.
Yeah, that was Leicester's second game of the season, their first away one at Stamford Bridge of the season. And let's have a listen back to the game as the Shares were spoiled 1-1.
Well, good afternoon again, everyone. Stamford Bridge is ready for a party. The return of Frank Lampard, much heralded after his time with Derby County. His first home game comes against Leicester City, who are determined to spoil the party. Oh, Mason Mount robs Ndidi and scores! And that is a horrible goal for Leicester City to concede. Wilfred Ndidi gifts the ball to Mason Mount and he fires it into the bottom corner past Schmeichel. Ndidi is helped up by Kaglar Soyuncu as if to say, get it out of your mind because we have to go again. Mason Mount scores for Chelsea. They lead by a goal to 0. Maddison's corner on the right-hand side, good delivery, and Ndidi heads in! Leicester City have equalised! Wilfred Ndidi, redemption! It was his mistake that led to Mason Mount's goal. It's his equaliser that leads to Leicester City bouncing up and down. It's Chelsea 1, Leicester 1. Fuchs nutmegs Pedro and he's away from Pedro. Edge of the penalty area. In it comes, it's Perez and now Maddison. Can he find a shot? He can! And he puts it over the bar when he really should have scored. What a chance for James Maddison and what a chance for 2-1 Leicester City. There is the full-time whistle and it finishes Chelsea 1, Leicester 1. After 10 minutes you'd have said absolutely thank you very much, but after Wilfred Ndidi equalised on 67 minutes, really only one team in it, and that was Leicester City.
Every step of Leicester City's Premier League campaign. You're listening to LCFC Radio.
It was a long time ago that, Gerry, wasn't it? All the way back in August. So you can't really draw too much, I guess, from that game for either teams, do you think?
Well, not as far as today's concerned, no. But, as we were just talking, looking back on that game, it was obviously about the start for Chelsea and the finish for Leicester. Now, going into today's game, I did say that Leicester have to turn the screw, and so they have to start the better, and then probably not allow, if that's the case and they do get in front, then it's all about not allowing Chelsea to get back into the game. Chelsea allowed Leicester to get back into the game because of their poor setup from the set piece. Obviously Wilfred converted that set piece, and then Leicester controlled the game from there on in. So it's important that is not the case today from a Leicester point of view if they're going to start the game, as we've been talking about, in a positive manner. So that's the thing you learn from it, is you don't want to let Chelsea take control early doors, and you have to finish the game stronger like you did against Chelsea. So basically what you're asking them to do is try and control the game from the off. Yes, Chelsea are going to get possession in the game, they're going to get chances in the game, but you have to limit those and try and control the game for as much of it as possible.
Well, the Leicester squad have clearly been looking back at that game in August because Harvey Barnes was speaking about it this week.
Yeah, like you say, I think, I remember that game. Obviously going down in the game, but then sort of the second half, I think we showed, as a side how we can play, and sort of, I think we really were dominant in that game. Obviously unlucky in the end not to come away with all 3 points, but like you say, we've definitely shown that this year against some of the teams around us we can more than match them.
I think that's an important point that he makes at the end there, Gerry, isn't it? That no matter who Leicester have played this season, they have matched them at times in games that they've played. You think of the two that are right at the top of the table. Liverpool, for 94 minutes of the game, Leicester were getting a point at Anfield, something that no team has done this season. And then Manchester City. They took the lead. They were certainly in that game, and then obviously Kevin De Bruyne and Man City showed their class towards the end of that one. But there's been no team really this season that Leicester have been shrinking violets to.
No, absolutely not. And he's right in what he said. Harvey says that there was only one team in it at the end, but the reality of that game was Chelsea could have been out of sight before half-time. And they weren't. And so you have to say that if you're going to analyse the game on balance, that probably a draw was a fair result, even though there's another saying, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. But you have to, sometimes in football, you have to analyse chances created. And in that game, I'm pretty sure it was even Steven, the chances created by both teams. But going back to what you were saying, absolutely spot on. There's only been, 2 games, and that was the Liverpool game here that I can think of. And probably, the second half of the game against Manchester City, where Leicester have been outclassed all season, you have to say. No other game springs to mind. There's been times where the performances haven't been at a level that we're used to seeing. Southampton here is one game. But as far as being outclassed by teams, 2 games spring to mind. 1.5 games. The Liverpool game here and the second half against Manchester City.
The man whose voice we just heard there, Harvey Barnes, Gerry, he's had quite a resurgent 2020, hasn't he? He's been involved in goals, both scoring them and creating them. He of course created that equaliser at Villa Park, the goal that we all thought maybe would have turned the tide on the evening. Unfortunately, it didn't do so, but he's looked very good, hasn't he? He's at the beginning of the season, his end product was good. Then he went through a little bit of a lull, didn't he? But recently he's been right in and amongst it in terms of an attacking point of view for Leicester.
Yeah, he's a young lad, Harvey, and he's a slow burn. He's a softly spoken lad. He's not an extrovert kind of personality. He's quite softly spoken, really humble guy when you speak to him. Lovely lad, and he deserves everything he gets. But sometimes it comes a little bit later and it takes a little bit longer to just hone your skills and maximise your potential. But without doubt, the longer the season has gone on, then the better Harvey Barnes has become. There's no doubt about that. And he's now starting to get a decent goal return added into his assists. And that is great for everyone here. He's a real threat for Leicester. He showed it again on Tuesday night with his assist for Kelechi and Nacho's equaliser, as you said. And then in the 3 or 4 games before that, or the 5 games before that, he scored 3 and 4. So that's his goal return coming to fruition there. So exciting times for this young man. And he's one of those players that wants to learn, wants to improve, wants to be successful. He's not happy to just, rest on his pace or whatever talent he has. He wants to get better and better.
A little bit later on Matchday Live, we'll hear from former Chelsea winger Pat Nevin, giving his thoughts on Chelsea. But before he did that, and off air, Gerry, he was asking me about Harvey Barnes, and he says he really likes the look of him. And Pat Nevin obviously was a very successful winger himself. So that's high praise, firstly, for Harvey Barnes from that. And he says that his raw pace is something that is important, but he doesn't want people or Leicester fans to get hung up on the fact that maybe he doesn't contribute as many goals or as many of his assists as you like, because sometimes as wingers you just don't get the ball.
Yeah, and what another thing people have to remember is Harvey Barnes is not naturally a wide player, so he's learning on the job. He's an attacking midfielder, and that's where he was. That's how he was raised as a footballer, as an attacking midfielder. And we've even seen him play up front and do a mighty fine job of that against Wigan in the FA Cup. So he's learning on the job, and sometimes it takes a little bit longer when you're playing a position that, you've not been brought up playing, you've not been taught the ropes up throughout your career. So he's learning all the time. But you're right to say, the one thing he has got is raw pace. And then that little bit of trickery, that little bit of winger guy, as Steve Guppy would have had, then that will all come into play as he gets a little bit more experience and his decision making on the ball. That will all improve with a little bit of time. And I think it's really, really important that he's afforded that time. because he's got all the attributes of a modern day footballer.
I guess that's something that you don't really know unless you've played the game yourself, in terms of the experience and knowing what to do in certain situations that you purely learn through playing games of football.
Correct, and we've seen it in Harvey's game throughout the season, where he has been in really good positions and he's taken the wrong option, or he's hesitated. And that just comes with the inexperience of playing at this level. And as I said to you before, not knowing that position inside and out. And that's the stuff that he has to learn. But the more we see Harvey, the more he's learning, the more he's improving. And so now you're getting to see more assists, you're getting to see more goals. So yeah, you know, as I said, it's exciting times for everyone involved, for Leicester City and for Harvey Barnes.
Harvey Barnes and the rest of the Leicester group are out warming up here at King Power Stadium ahead of this game. There's about 35 minutes to go until kick-off. As we've already said, there's 14 games left of the season, and Harvey Barnes says there's full focus now heading into those.
Still a lot of football to play, a lot of points to play for still, so you know, as a side and as a club, we need to make sure each game that we're 100% focused and make sure that, you know, results-wise, we get back to where we want to be.
You can actually hear the disappointment, Gerry, in his voice, can't you? And it was only a couple of days after that Villa defeat, and it's something I'm sure that, I guess even to an extent, till yesterday or even this morning, it's something I guess maybe that they'll have been thinking about, because it was so disappointing, and the nature of it, the way that the opposition goalkeeper played, and the VAR and what could or couldn't have been on the evening. But as soon as they arrived, do you think, at King Power Stadium today, does that all go? Is it full focus on Chelsea and the Premier League again today?
It has to be. And it's difficult, because things do play on your mind as a player. Because we're all human, and it's human nature to think about what could have been, and, you know, how could they let that happen? But, you know, once you walk through those doors into that dressing room, and you're in that group along with your peers, then, you know, there's one thing on your mind, has to be on your mind, and that's Chelsea today, because, you know, Chelsea are a good side. You know, they're still in fourth spot. Yes, their form's a little bit up and down, but they're in fourth spot, and they're the closest team to Leicester, chasing them, and so they have to refocus. I don't think it'll be too difficult a job. It's all about. It's not just about, you know, putting what happened on Tuesday to the back of their mind. I have to forget about it completely, because if they don't forget about it completely, then you could see that spill out onto the pitch today in certain areas, and that's what we can't afford to let happen.
I'm just looking back at the 2000-2001 season, Gerry. I know you were injured for a bit of that season, but I know a game that you hate looking back on, both you and Matt specifically, is the Wycombe game in the Cup.
Yeah.
But when that happened, and when that defeat happened, there was a run of defeats that stretched through March and through April. And I'm not by any means suggesting a similar thing is going to happen to this current group here, but I guess Brendan Rodgers and the way that he'll be talking to the group this week is about, listen, Tuesday is now done. Yes, it was disappointing, but it has to be out of the minds now, and the focus has to be on the rest of the season, because that season, we're just looking back on it now, as you can see the guy. Obviously, you were doing well. I think you were in the top four still at that point.
Well, yeah, I think we were fifth in the league. I think one of the biggest reasons why you see us going on that run after we're getting beat is because I wasn't playing. And then I'm finishing games down, if I'm being honest with you. But I would say that. Yeah, I think, listen, we were never out of the top six up until that stage. We beat Liverpool 2-0 at home the week before the Cup quarter-final. But in all honesty, Dan, we weren't a great side, even though we were top six. We were always shaking our head after games, thinking, how are we still in the top six? How are we still in this position? How are we in that position? Somehow we were. And, you know, you had to give the players credit for keeping us there, because, you know, we weren't the best team in the world. A lot of players have been moved on or sold. And I think that was just, you know, the season was just one game too far for us, and that was the Wycombe game. And then after that, the wheels came off. This is a totally different team. I can't see that happening.
Well, that's good that there's no parallels then to be drawn between that season and this one then. Just over half an hour to go now until kick-off here at King Power Stadium, so we'll get a reminder of today's team news with our commentator Chris Parrott.
Yeah, and there are 2 changes for Leicester from the 11 that started against Aston Villa in the League Cup a few days ago. There is no Wilfred Ndidi today, out with a sore knee. Brendan Rodgers has confirmed that, so Hamza Chowdhury comes in to the holding midfield berth. But at the top end of the pitch, Jamie Vardy is fit to start, having been on the bench at Villa. So those are the 2 changes. Kelechi Iheanacho drops to the bench for Vardy. Leicester's team, Schmeichel in goal, back 4, Ricardo, Sayuncu, Evans and Chilwell. Chowdhury, the holding midfielder, ahead of him. Perez on the right, Tielemans, Maddison, Barnes on the left, with Vardy leading the line, the Premier League's top goal scorer this season with 17 to his name. On the bench, Ward, Justin, Gray, Albrighton, Pratt, Fuchs and Iheanacho. Ryan Bennett not involved today, having arrived yesterday on transfer deadline day because he arrived too late to be registered. So I wonder if he'll be here at King Power Stadium today watching on. For Chelsea, they make 7 changes from an FA Cup win at Hull a week ago. The big news is in goal. Willy Caballero starts for the first time in the Premier League since here in May, when he kept a clean sheet. Kepa has been left on the bench today. Tammy Abraham has been passed fit to start up front. Chelsea go 4-3-3, Caballero in goal, back 4 of Reece James, Antonio Rudiger, Andrea Christensen, and the captain Cesar Azpilicueta. Midfield 3, Jorginho, Mason Mount, and N'Golo Kante, of course, the former Leicester man. And the front 3, alongside Abraham, are Callum Hudson-Odoi and Pedro. On the bench for Chelsea, alongside Kepa, Marcus Alonso, Ross Barkley, Willian the Brazilian, Mateo Kovacic, Fikayo Tomori and Michy Batshuayi.
Thank you very much, Chris. Still to come on Matchday Live, we'll hear from Pat Nevin, Frank Lampard, Brendan Rodgers, as well as new signing Bennett, as we were just hearing there from Chris Parrott.
You're listening to LCFC Radio.
The UK is withdrawing some staff from its embassy and consulates in China due to the coronavirus. 259 people there are now known to have died. Meanwhile, here, health officials are looking for anyone who's been in close contact with 2 patients being treated for the virus in the UK. Rose Gallagher from the Royal College of Nursing says it can be transmitted in the same way as cold and flu.
We know that the virus can spread from person to person, so that's spread through respiratory droplets as we sneeze or cough, and of course we can pick up the virus from surfaces around us. So, and on a similar line to flu, so it's the same precautions that we should be taking.
Boris Johnson says he's preparing for bumps in the road as far as Brexit is concerned, but insists it will be a success. The UK left the EU last night, prompting celebrations across the country. Fireworks and flares were let off in central London. The Prime Minister says it's a moment of hope.
This is the moment when we really begin to unite and level up, defeating crime, transforming our NHS, and with better education, with superb technology, and with the biggest revival of our infrastructure since the Victorians, we will spread hope and opportunity to every part of the UK.
4 men are being questioned on suspicion of murder following a fatal stabbing in Essex. Police say 2 men were attacked outside a village pub in Writtle last night. It's emerged the helicopter involved in the crash that killed basketball legend Kobe Bryant was not licensed to fly in foggy conditions. 8 others, including his daughter Gianna, died in Sunday's accident. Soaring temperatures and strong winds have stoked bushfires near Australia's capital city. A state of emergency has been declared in the territory, which is home to Canberra for the first time since 2003. That's the latest. I'm Emma Jones.
The only place you can listen to every Leicester City match online. This is LCFC Radio.
Yes, welcome back to Matchday Live here on LCFC Radio at King Power Stadium as we count down to kick-off in the Premier League game between Leicester and Chelsea. I'm Dan Bates. Sat alongside me is Gerry Taggart, former central defender for Leicester City, and of course it was deadline day yesterday and Leicester signed a central defender on loan from Wolves. It was Ryan Bennett, and he spoke to LCFC TV after his move.
Well, Ryan, welcome to Leicester City. How does it feel to be here?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, obviously,
it's a massive club. You look at the league table now. It doesn't lie, you know. I mean, the team's where they should be, you know. So it's obviously great to come in and be part of that now.
You've had a chance to look around. What are your first impressions?
It's good. I mean, obviously, I've also seen the plans for the new training ground as well, which look unbelievable. You know what I mean? And you see the way the club is moving, is in a forward direction. So, as I said, it's exciting to be part of that for the next few months. You know, and being around here today, obviously, you meet some of the staff, see the place. It's nice.
It's been a busy day, but have you had a chance to see any of the players yet?
I see Johnny Evans. That's about it. Yeah. So it's been a long day, but you know it's finally done. So yeah. So I guess I'll meet them probably tomorrow at the game. So yeah, we'll see.
And what do you make to what's happening here at Leicester this season? It's been a remarkable year so far.
Yeah, I just touched on that. You know, I mean, it's a team that's always been good. Obviously, the forward momentum they've had, and with the new manager coming in, has sort of took them to another level. You know what I mean? And it's one of them games you look at now. Obviously, playing against Leicester in the Times is a tough game. And you know, as I said, the league table doesn't lie over this duration. So it's a credit to the club, credit to the team, and also the players. You know. And I'm hearing it's a great group of players that are in the change room, you know, so hopefully I can't wait to sort of work it out and see the boys in there.
Ryan Bennett there speaking to LCFC TV after his loan move was secured on deadline day yesterday. Gerry, what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, well, obviously there was, you know, a couple of reasons why, you know, Leicester brought in a defender first and foremost, and one of them was to let one of the other centre halves go out on loan, Benkovic. Things gone out on loan, so Brendan obviously needed to fill that gap, and that he obviously, you know, was pretty keen for Benkovic to go out on loan, but he needed to make sure that he had something as a replacement. I don't know exactly what's going on between Ryan Bennett and Wolves, but you're talking about a player who, for the most part, you know, was an integral part of Wolves' success, and then for some reason, has found himself out of the Wolves team. So I think that's a bit of a coup for Brendan Rodgers to be able to pick someone like Ryan Bennett up. You know, you don't become a bad player overnight. So it would seem to me that there's probably a bit of politics going on at Wolves between Ryan Bennett and you know, the management staff there, and he's found himself out of favour. But make no mistake, he's played his part in most success in recent times. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, he made 40 appearances in all competitions last season for
Well, there you go.
When they had this fantastic season.
Yeah, and so that speaks for itself. So you're thinking to yourself, why would Wolves let someone like that go? So that, you know, so there's umpteen answers to that question. But there's only one right one, which obviously we don't know the answer to. But, you know, Wolves' loss is Leicester's gain, in my opinion.
Well, you can look out for that Ryan Bennett interview. It's over on lcfc.com/TV to hear from the new man. He's here at King Power Stadium today, obviously not involved in the Matchday squad, so he can have a good look at his new teammates and, of course, the opposition Chelsea. And former winger Pat Nevin accepts that it's fair to say the Blues have been inconsistent this season.
There has been, but one of the things that Chelsea have found very difficult is to break down packed defences. But when they've played against teams that are more open, they've been good games, and Chelsea have been quite successful. So you look at, you know, the way Leicester play. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to see Leicester a lot recently. I was down at the Brentford game. I was at the King Power for the game against West Ham. So, you know, watch them generally. I love watching Leicester. I love the way they play. I like the way Brendan sets up his team, and it adapts all the time. But it's open. And it's attack-minded. Yes, they can play in the break as well. So they're actually quite similar, the two teams. And the fact that there is that similarity, but not in a dull way, it should be an absolute cracker. So good news for Chelsea, because they can play a game that suits them. Bad news for Chelsea, the pace that Leicester have got, you know, certainly in the wide areas, I thought they looked absolutely brilliant. If Jamie Vardy's available, you know, that makes a big difference as well. What Chelsea have got though is players like Mason Mount, who can come from midfield, who can score the odd goal. But actually the biggest question is who will score the goals for Chelsea. They're lacking someone who can break down defences, you know, and since Eden Hazard left the club, there's no one who's really done that. You know, Willian to some degree, Pedro to some degree, all those players can do it to a degree. but not to the level Hazard did. And now that Chelsea have found out they're getting nothing new in the transfer window, that's a big concern to them. So Chelsea are playing well, they're a good team to watch, they get a lot of possession, they don't create that many chances. So what should Leicester watch out for? Their own mistakes.
The only place you can listen to every Leicester City match online. This is LCFC Radio.
That was former Chelsea man Pat Nevin there, Gerry, speaking ahead of the game today and about the consistency of Chelsea this season. He says obviously they're very good going forward, but they are vulnerable at the back, so Leicester can exploit that. Again, as he was talking about Harvey Barnes, he was also talking about the pace that Leicester have. A lot of teams frightened by the pace that Leicester have, obviously with the likes of Jamie Vardy up front, and he says that it'll be tough for that Chelsea defence today. Yeah, it's been one of their main issues, hasn't it, for Chelsea, is the amount of goals that they concede. And you've got to, you look at, their back line, and apart from Reece James, you've got to say, you've got Azpilicueta, Andreas Christensen and Antonio Rudiger, experienced players, even though Christensen is a young centre-half, but he's played enough games now to be classed as an experienced player. I don't know whether or not, because it's 4, if you include the goalkeeper, then you've got 5 different nationalities playing along your back line. So is there a little bit of a contrast in how the game should be played, how you should defend? I don't know, but obviously there's an issue there in what you have to class as an experienced backline. So really there should be no issues, you would think. And in front of that backline you've got N'Golo Kante, you've got Jorginho, again vastly experienced players who know how to run a midfield, who know how to protect the backline. So then why is that happening? Well, we'll find out today, if and when it happens, why it happens. And going forward, though, I mean, you look in that midfield area. Obviously, Kante and Jorginho will be in the screen type roles, or the playmaker roles, if you like, from a Jorginho point of view. And then up front and in behind, Mason Mount, Pedro, Hudson-Odoi, Tammy Abraham. These are all players with a lot of quality. 3 of those, though, extremely young. Obviously, Mount, Hudson-Odoi, Tammy Abraham, young English players, which is exciting from an England point of view. Pedro offers a little bit of experience in there, but it's an exciting attacking lineup from a Chelsea point of view. Yeah, it's exciting, but the same, the way I was talking about Harvey Barnes earlier, the same could be said for Chelsea's front line. They're all young players. They're not used to playing at this level on a consistent basis. Okay, you could say that, Abraham has played Premier League football for Swansea before. Yes, we know that. But at this level, with this pressure, in a big club like Chelsea, then you could say the same for these lads as we're saying about Harvey Barnes. It's a slow burner. They're all hungry young players. They're all hungry to be successful. The likes of your Mounts, Odois, Abrahams and so on. But it's just taking them a little bit of time, to fit into the way Chelsea want to play, to understand the pressure that's involved when you play for a club like Chelsea, and understand that success is the only remedy. Second best is not good enough for a club like Chelsea, just like it's not good enough for a Man United or a Manchester City or a Liverpool or an Arsenal. So you have to understand that when you play for Chelsea. And so that just takes a little bit of time to get into the psyche and them to become, almost robotic in their play. And obviously the manager, Frank Lampard, has put an awful lot of faith in them, Gerry. And do you think that the travelling Chelsea fans over there will be delighted with the way the season's gone so far, considering the transfer ban in the summer and the way they started? They probably weren't expecting to finish top 4, but the way they're going, I know it's tight between them and 5th, 6th, 7th, but they're in that top 4 place. Do you think Lampard will get a little bit of extra time because he's got that legend status amongst the I think so. I think, you have to give Frank Lampard credit as well, because he has
you could say the transfer bans helped him in making his decision making and throwing these young lads in, and he has done so. The Chelsea fans will appreciate that. They'll also appreciate that, you know, it is Frank Lampard, so he has got that legend status. He was a phenomenal player for Chelsea, Frank Lampard, and is their highest ever goal scorer as well. And I think he should be afforded that time, because it's not an easy job to come into. And when you're having to rely on some of your younger players and throwing them in at the deep end, then people have to understand that it's not going to happen overnight. Now, Chelsea are trying their best to throw away 4th place, but it seems like everybody else behind them are saying, no, we don't want it. It's yours. You hold on to it, Chelsea. And so, you know, it's just one of them weird situations that every now and again the Premier League sort of, you know, flings at you. Is that, you know, we've seen it with 7th place, I think, last season, where nobody seemed to want it and Burnley ended up getting it. And this year it's 4th place. Nobody seems to be willing to, you know, take the bull by the horns and grab it and say, and run with it. So, it's, you know, Chelsea at the minute find themselves still there, but it can't go on forever. That's the thing, with a club the size of Chelsea, it cannot go on forever. And I think come the summer, when Frank Lampard will demand some transfer money to try and strengthen his squad, for sure. They need a marquee signing. Chelsea are famous for marquee signings, and at the minute they haven't got one.
Both sets of players, both the Leicester and Chelsea players, have just finished their warm-ups and headed down the tunnel to hear from their respective managers, who were both, incidentally, in the week highly complimentary of each other in their pre-match press conferences. And Frank Lampard was talking about his relationship with Brendan Rodgers.
My personal relationship more is from here, and he worked obviously over in the academy. I've kept in contact to a degree, not so much in recent years, but whenever I see him, obviously we have good conversations. Huge respect for him. How he's worked his way from this academy produces not just players, it produces coaches. We can see that on the first team staff, and he's a great example of that.
What do you remember of him when he was here? Did you see him and think, actually, yeah, he's got
yeah,
something
he
about
stuck
him?
out. He stuck out for his knowledge, for his thirst for knowledge. He was sort of already learning different languages, and it sounds a simple thing, but I could see that he wanted to do that football related, to see how he could open up his thought process, and it was clear that he had that on the training pitch as well.
Interesting to hear that from Frank Lampard, isn't it, Gerry, about Brendan Rodgers and about... Sorry, you're smirking at me there, you've put me off, Gerry. About... Did he disagree then with what Frank Lampard was saying?
No. But what part? What part is thirst for knowledge? Or the way he wanted to learn new languages?
Yeah, just the way that he obviously conducted himself when he was there.
No, absolutely not. You know, I think if you're going to be a modern manager, then you're dealing with umpteen different nationalities. So it's always nice to know, as a manager, that you've got a certain amount of communication in different languages, especially if the players in the dressing room are talking about you in a bad way. And as a manager, if you know something, about their language, then you can, you know, you've got an insight to them. So I think it's important for, you know, modern day coaches, managers to learn new languages, because it's football at the end of the day is all about communication. It's all about relaying information, and if you have to, you know, take up a different language to be able to do that, then you shouldn't be adverse from doing it.
Well, I guess you could argue that, for example, if there's a player that's highly sought after from Spain and he's been linked with a number of clubs, and he comes over and he speaks to managers, and one manager speaks to him in his language, even if it's not his first one, that might sway him, even to something as simple as that.
Absolutely. I think it's an important role. And managers have more spare time than you think, you know, to take on board this. And I think if you can communicate, I'm not saying be fluent, but communicate in at least two or three different languages, then that is a big plus to you as a manager, as a coach, without a shadow of a doubt. Spanish isn't that hard to learn. French isn't that hard to learn. German isn't that hard to learn. So why not take a couple of those languages on board? And pretty much they're your three universal languages. are French, German, along with English, obviously. French, German, and Spanish, are spoken in many, many countries around the world. And so, if you can speak one of those three languages, then you've got a chance at one, if not more, your players are going to understand you.
Well, as we heard from Frank Lampard there, he spoke highly of Brendan Rodgers, and the Leicester manager did the same about Frank Lampard. He was complimentary about his opposite number.
I think he showed great courage as a manager and great bravery, because, he could have played Giroud up front or Batshuayi, but he played Tammy Abraham as a young player. He could have played Pedro, who's an experienced player, international player, but he's played Mason Mount. So he's really given the belief to the young players. They've done very, very well, and of course sometimes you get inconsistencies with it, but I think he and his staff have done a fantastic job, and for us at the weekend it will be a tough game.
It's always a tough game, isn't it, in the Premier League? But coming off the back of Tuesday, as we've spoken about already, Brendan Rodgers will be saying, presumably in that dressing room right now to his players, let's get right back on it. We have a chance here to go 11 clear of Chelsea in 4th place and 17 clear of 5th place, albeit could only be temporarily with the games that take place later on in the weekend, but 17 points is the incentive today.
Yeah, I think, you listen to both managers talk about each other, a bit of a bromance developing there between the two of them, but that will not be the case in each of the dressing rooms. Because they know each other so well, and because they've got great respect for each other, that will make it even more, each manager even more determined to get one over on the other. And obviously there's goals at the end of every game. There's goals that managers want to achieve at the end of every game. And obviously for Brendan it's about widening that gap, potentially, as you said, to 17 points, even albeit for a short, potentially a short period of time. It just puts the pressure on the other teams that are playing later on today and tomorrow. And obviously for Frank Lampard, an opportunity to close the gap. It's a 6-pointer for Frank Lampard today. There's no doubt about that there. The pressure's on him, not so much Brendan Rodgers today. Obviously they want to bounce back from the defeat Tuesday and try and maintain and grow that gap. But for Frank Lampard, there's more pressure on him because he's at Chelsea and he wants to try and at least finish 4th this season. If he's going to do that, then he has to get a result here today.
In his press conference, Gerry, obviously Brendan Rodgers was asked about that game with Aston Villa, and he just says we move on and we'll use that failure to help us succeed going forward, and it gives us extra determination to push on. And that's good to hear, isn't it, from Brendan Rodgers, that they will use that disappointment. They hope, and we hope, that we'll be sat here in years to come talking about Leicester in further semi-finals, in further huge games in the Premier League. Yeah. Hopefully maybe the Champions League next season. So they'll remember the disappointment of Tuesday at Villa and think, I don't want that to happen again. They'll use that and spin it as an experience.
Yeah, when you're in what is an overwhelmingly positive environment, and you have the massive disappointment of missing out on a Wembley Cup final, then that is something that can, grate on you, but only for a short period of time, because that confident feeling will soon come back. And what Brendan's saying is, learn from the disappointment, embrace the disappointment of tonight, because that is not our season. This is a one-off, but you always learn more from your defeats than you do from your wins. So embrace it, learn from it, and then bin it. Move on and bin it. Don't let it happen again, because you know now what it feels like to have a massive disappointment in your life. If you don't want it to happen again, you have to soak it up. You have to feel the full force of it. And you can only do that in a group environment. You can't do it on your own. You have to talk about it as a group. and you have to embrace it as a group. And if you do that, you come out the other end.
Do you think then after that game on Tuesday in the dressing room, he'll have been saying exactly that, rather than maybe analysing the game or the reasons why? It was more, let's use this, let's galvanise each other to push on.
It's about the disappointment the players felt. There's no point analysing the cup match, cup semi-final, because there's no other cup games ahead of you. So it's a different scenario to playing in a league match. You analyse the disappointment or the euphoria of winning. And unfortunately, it was about analysing disappointment and using that disappointment to become, a better team, a better group of players.
Well, let's hope they do. Leicester City today. We're 5 minutes away from kick-off here at King Power Stadium. Kasper Schmeichel and Cesar Azpilicueta are ready to lead out their teams here this afternoon. A reminder, if you're listening in on social media, this feed will stop just before kick-off, so you'll need to head to lcfc.com/radio to hear full coverage of the game, available for free. But we'll hand you over now to your commentary team of Gerry Taggart and first Chris Parrott.
Madison, oh, that is absolutely brilliant! And it's a beauty. Jamie Vardy again for Leicester City. He's up and running. What a fantastic goal!
Touch, back of the net.
Come on.
There's a somersault to celebrate with the travelling Blue Army.
All the games, all the goals, and all the big moments. You're listening to LCFC Radio.
As I say, you should save the best until last, but this weekend the big Premier League game is first up, and it's at the King Power Stadium. Leicester against Chelsea, third versus fourth, and vital points to play for in the race for Champions League football. A victory today would put the Foxes 11 points ahead of Chelsea and 17 points clear of fifth, with only 13 games to play. The stakes are high on a gorgeous winter's Saturday lunchtime. The sun is out, the players are in the tunnel. King Power Stadium looks resplendent, and what an opportunity this is. The big games keep on coming thick and fast in this incredibly impressive season. Chelsea are the visitors today, and here come the two teams out into a packed out King Power Stadium. They say great teams bounce back quickly, as Leicester look to put the disappointments of the League Cup semi-final loss behind them straight away, with victory here against Chelsea today to strengthen their grip on a top four spot and a ticket to the Champions League for next season. A massive prize. Leicester can take another stride towards it this afternoon. And the two sets of players shaking hands down below us here. Pitch is perfect. The referee today is Lee Mason. He was the video assistant referee at Villa Park on Tuesday. Brendan Rodgers asking for clarity as to why he didn't give a penalty in the first half. Here is the all-important team news today. Two changes from Aston Villa. They're both very notable. Jamie Vardy is fit to start from the beginning and leads the line. But Wilfred Ndidi is out with a sore knee, not wrist today. So Hamza Chowdhury comes in for him. Iheanacho, by the way, drops to the bench for Vardy. It's the normal 4-1-4-1 formation. Kasper Schmeichel in goal. Ricardo, Shaqla Soyuncu, Johnny Evans and Ben Chilwell are the back four. Chowdhury, the holding midfielder. Ahead of him, Azy Perez, Yuri Tielemans, James Maddison and Harvey Barnes. With Vardy up front, his 199th Premier League appearance for Leicester City. It puts him clear in second on the all-time list. On the bench for Leicester, the sub-goalkeeper Danny Ward, James Justin, Damari Gray, Mark Albrighton, Kelechi Iheanacho, Dennis Pratt and Christian Fuchs. Chelsea, very interesting team news for them. 7 changes from the win over Hull in the FA Cup a week ago. 4 alterations from their last Premier League game 10 days or so ago against Arsenal. Willy Caballero is in goal today, preferred to Kepa. That is a big call for Frank Lampard. They go 4-3-3. Caballero in goal, as I mentioned. Back four, Reece James, Antonio Rudiger, Andrea Christensen, and the captain Cesar Azpilicueta, who starts a left back because James is fit to start a right back. Midfield three, Jorginho, Mason Mount, and N'Golo Kante, one of Leicester's title-winning heroes, of course. And the front three, Pedro, Callum Hudson-Odoi, and Tammy Abraham. Frank Lampard has said in the last 30 minutes he's fit. Sometimes you have to play through pain. So Tammy Abraham isn't 100% fit, but he does start this evening, or this afternoon. The bench for Chelsea: Kepa, Marcus Alonso, Ross Barkley, Willian, Mateo Kovacic, Fikayo Tomori, and Michy Batshuayi. The coin toss has happened, and the teams have been turned around again. I don't know whether that's Kasper Schmeichel choosing to do it, or indeed his opposite number today. But we are now ready for action. Another huge game at the King Power Stadium in the Premier League. And Jamie Vardy, back in the 11, is about to get us underway. Leicester kicking towards the Kop in the first half, in the blue shirts, white shorts, blue socks. Chelsea in their change strip of all black with orange socks. And we are ready for battle. A win today will put Leicester 17 points clear of 5th. Another opportunity at the end of a huge week. Lee Mason has just checked his whistle and his watch one more time, and we are about to commence here. Leicester and Chelsea given the honour of kicking off the new Premier League weekend as Hamza Chowdhury, right-footed, clears up towards Harvey Barnes on the left wing, and Chelsea win the ball through Callum Hudson-Odoi. Gerry Taggart finished 1-1.